Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program Karen Sage, who is Chief Marketing Officer at MercuryGate. And today we're going to talk about where's my stuff, visibility and collaboration in transportation management. Now, we all know how hard it is to get things done in our personal lives if we can't find our keys or our wallet or our phones. But it's a completely different story, more complicated story when it comes to supply chain management, if you don't know where your stuff is, especially when it comes to inventory in motion. So why is this an ongoing challenge for shippers and logistics service providers? Why is visibility and collaboration more important than ever today? And how is technology, helping shippers and logistics service providers be able to answer that question, where's my stuff, more effectively? Well, those are some of the questions we're going to discuss in today's episode, and it's great to have Karen back in the program where she'll share her insights and advice on this topic. So, Karen, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Adrian. Glad to be back. Thanks for the invite.
Well, Karen, I think where's my stuff? I mean, I think when you talk to supply chain logistics professionals, they talk about visibility and really gets down to a lot of times, answering what seems to be like a simple question to ask, but it's not necessarily a simple question to answer for shippers and logistics service providers. So why is that? Why is that question so difficult to answer? And what are some of the challenges that shippers and LSPs face in their day-to-day operations?
The challenge here in part mirrors the growing complexity of today's supply chains. Networks of suppliers, in-house and outsourced manufacturers, distributors, third-party logistic providers, and carriers, they all more than ever rely on information together to synchronize and speed the movement of goods to customers. All these players have various roles in the process of the end-to-end delivery, and each one must be able to speak to each other in a way that provides detail about the whereabouts of the shipment. They then need to tie it back at a level that's meaningful to the stakeholder, asking the question, where's my stuff? The problem, of course, is that often information is siloed and or aggregated at different levels and tagged with different means of identification. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's a complicating factor when it comes to being able to provide an answer to what seems like a simple question like, where's my stuff? Take, for example, a product that has a SKU which is packed into a larger order, which is then combined with other orders into truckload. There may be multiple stop locations, packing, unpacking, mixing with other loads. Complicating things even more are different players that have various roles in the delivery. And they all have different pieces of the information. So, how do all these pieces of information flow back into that simple question of where's my stuff? For example, a truck may be aware of a delay in a leg of its route, but how does this get translated to meaningful information about delivery timelines and the level of interest of whoever's asking the question? And that's really the issue at hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think you painted a great picture there. I mean, I think, if you, a lot of people like consumers, right? They just see that, the mail carrier, a USP, a UPS or FedEx show up and, just drop a box, right, at their location. Or they may see a truck that just pulls up to a dock, at a distribution center. But when you really look at everything that went on until that final delivery point, from a physical standpoint, I mean, all the movement of the packing, the combination of boxes into larger conveyances and so on and so forth. I mean, it's a very, complicated and there's a lot of activity that takes place there. And I think the challenge is, to your point, is that there's also an associated trail of information and data that gets generated all throughout that, journey. Except that data, that information resides in many different companies and in many different, systems, and trying to bring all that together, to kind of be able to answer quickly and accurately, where's my stuff, has been the challenge. And I think you brought up something that was going to be my next question. I mean, because answering that question, where's my stuff, goes beyond knowing, where's a truck or where's a container currently located. I mean, in other words, what type of visibility are shippers and LSPs, really looking for, and what's required to enable it, right? Because, what's really important is not, you may want to know where the truck is, but it's, what's inside that truck, all right? What's inside that container is important too, right?
Right. Yes, I mean, you make a good point. To some stakeholders, knowing where a truck or container is currently located is of profound importance. Think, for example, a dock loader who needs to ensure he or she has the bandwidth on the dock to unload the truck when the truck arrives. But to somebody else, like an end consumer, that person, on the other hand, is not really going to care about where the truck is, unless, of course, its location impacts the order's shipment arrival time. The ultimate vision of supply chain transparency is to have one single shared workable version of the truth for all involved parties that gives the view in a way that is most meaningful to the particular situation. The term control tower is often brought up in this context, although it can mean a variety of things depending on who uses the term. The associated image is powerful. A high place with a traffic controller that oversees everything, that has all the relevant information, and in real time, who directs and optimizes the traffic flow under his or her responsibility. The key then is really to be able to make this, to take visibility and aggregate, normalize, and relate the data back to the key objects. For example, shippers now want visibility of their freight down to the SKU or purchase level order. And that level of visibility isn't really possible through spreadsheets or homegrown technology for that matter. So most organizations know that they need some type of system to really give them the visibility that they need into shipments. Of course, you want to be able to manage all the incoming data, and there's a lot of it. So that's why some of the best systems allow you to manage by exception, looking for example, shipments that are outside a certain level of tolerance with regard to location or delivery time.
Yeah, no, great, great points. I mean, I think, when I talk to folks, it's like, well, look, we've got SKUs, right? So we got the item level information, and that's what people order, right? And then those things get aggregated into an order number. And then you've got or a purchase order number, and then you've got a bill of lading, and then there's another number there. And then the carriers are sending status messages with other sorts of information there, and all this information has to get linked and correspond to one another, because the different stakeholders are all going to be searching relative to what's most important to them. Some people may be searching by purchase order number, or they may want to know how much inventory of this particular SKU is in transit, or they may want to know where this particular truck is right now, or container is right now. But you have to really, string all those things together and link them and, associate them in some way, right?
That's right. Many companies use the concept of where's my stuff as an umbrella term to cover those capabilities and information displays that they felt were most critical. They ask the question, where do we need more visibility? And often they follow that question with what kind of visibility would be most helpful. For instance, the company with thousands of inbound and outbound shipments each week probably needs more than just a list. They want to know which shipments are past due or likely late or critical to future deliveries, et cetera. So someone who is managing one of those processes may start out with a simple graph of key performance indicators, on-time receipts, customer service levels, for example, and then they may drill down to the specific data that's causing the metric to be to be less than desired.
Right. So let's get down to, the other question I get a lot with, visibility is, okay, well, it's good to have this visibility and everything else, but what do you actually do with it? I mean, how do you derive, business value from it? So why is answering that question, right? Where's my stuff, both quickly and accurately, so important for shippers and LSPs? I mean, what does this, at the end of the day, what does this information enable them to do?
So, I think that it's really about visibility and being able to track and trace and like I mentioned, drill down to the specific data that's causing the metric to be an issue. It's beyond, like when you say, where's my stuff, just location point isn't going to be the end all be all in terms of what that means. For example, I don't know if you've ever watched your Amazon deliveries, but sometimes it'll be in a place, quite far away, and it'll sit there for a few days. And then, all of a sudden it's kind of sped up and then ready for delivery. It's important to kind of look at where's my stuff and break that down into what it actually means. And I think that's important.
Right. Yeah. And then I think, at the end of the day, what I hear is that, ultimately it's the action that's driven by that information, right? It's to be able to take proactive action when necessary. And it's driven by, yeah, I think what I hear more and more from companies is that, there's cost factors to it that's always going to be important, right? So in terms of making sure you're managing transportation as efficiently as possible, in terms of inventory management, right? In terms of, not holding too much or too little inventory. So you need that information and making sure that the right inventory is in the right locations, right? But there's also the customer service component. I'm seeing more and more of this now where, customer satisfaction, customer experience is becoming a differentiator. So a lot of these initiatives, visibility initiatives, are driven by customer experience. Are you seeing the same thing?
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of it's interesting. You can have great customer experience, but go bankrupt doing it. And so it's about that trade-off and making sure that you're managing the metrics to that trade-off and not just managing everything as ship as fast as possible.
Right. Well, that's certainly the case. I mean, we see all this, quote unquote, free delivery, right? And Amazon kind of set the bar there, but if you don't really understand all the economics around that, because there is no such thing as free delivery, and you're not doing things that can counter that cost, that true cost that exists when you're shipping something, you could offer customers all the free delivery you want, but ultimately you're gonna go out of business. To your point. So let's talk about the role of technology now. I mean, what advancements are helping companies achieve greater visibility, to their shipments and orders, and what capabilities should, when it comes to a TMS, let's say, what capabilities should they look for in a solution?
I would put the technology advancements into three buckets. First, there's a ton of exciting work being done on tracking instrumentation. Location tracking is not just one single technology, rather it's a convergence of several technologies that need to be merged to create systems that track inventory or vehicle fleets. Similar systems can be created to deliver location-based services to wireless devices. But the whole notion of what can be tracked is being turned on its head. As companies begin integrating Internet of Things technology into the supply chain, managers are gaining real-time access to huge amounts of data. Always connected sensors monitor location, temperature, rough handling, and other metrics, and share that data all through the cloud in real time. It's actually pretty cool stuff. This kind of access to data not only enables managers to solve immediate problems, but it also paves the way for supply chain analysis and efficiency on a macro scale. The second technology bucket I would put out there is really the infrastructure to be able to manage all those data points and combine them into meaningful and actionable results. You talked a little bit about that before. And this is really where the TMS comes into play. An integrated TMS is going to provide an organization with all the shipping data in one place, that control tower view, if you will, with a variety of different viewpoints. It's important that TMS be integrated with other units and processes of enterprise. And what I mean by that is the connection to things like order management or ERPs. The third and final technology is how that information is accessed. This is, really providing shipment visibility for supply chain stakeholders. This is about where and how, where's my stuff is actually being asked and hopefully being answered. We just launched and announced a significant update feature as part of our TMS called the MercuryGate customer portal. The new portal provides customers and stakeholders an easy, accessible gateway where they can see loads, all the financials, and how much a certain load is going to cost them. For shippers, this means no more calling up the operations manager or an LSP calling up the consumer representative to find out status with the carrier. Both customers and stakeholders can securely log onto this easy-to-use portal to get information on shipping orders, smart metrics on key performance indicators, order details, status, quote tracking, and activity updates. It's really putting the right data into your customers' hands, giving them the visibility to really keep the freight moving efficiently. And really, being able to do those exceptions and make sure that you can take actions with those exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way you broke it down into three categories, and I like that. I think they build upon each other because I mean, if you look at that first category, I think the way I look at that is that today we've got access to exponentially more data and information than ever before, which is rich and powerful. But the danger with that is that you can you can get overwhelmed by just the sheer volume of data that's coming in. So you really need that second category you talked about, which is how do you make sense of that information, right? What's important, what's not important, what are the things I should be focusing on, that control tower view, if you will, and then being able to automate, the actions that you want to take based on that intelligence that's coming in. And then the third piece is the fact that, you've got to be able to access that information today in a variety of different, ways, whether it's from a mobile, standpoint, which is certainly something that we're seeing more and more over the past few years, to providing, one of the things I've been talking about when I talk about TMS is that TMS is no longer used by just a handful of people within the four walls of a shipper or an LSP. It's literally used by, thousands of people because you're providing different types of access and views and capabilities to people in customer service, to your customers, to your suppliers, and so forth. I mean, so it really is an application that if used to its full extent is an application that is used by many people, both inside the organization as well as outside the organization. So I like those three buckets. We're running short on time here, Karen. So I'm just going to go right to my last question. So as a way to wrap up, I mean, what questions should companies then ask themselves to assess whether they're a leader or a laggard when it comes to visibility?
So first of all, it's hard to sell simple visibility as the standalone capability. Just simply being able to see inventory and order information neatly organized on a screen isn't going to automatically increase revenue, improve customer service, or save money. So the big questions to ask are, are you delivering status updates to customers today? And if you are you answering the questions that your stakeholders are actually interested in? And are they satisfied with the method of how you are delivering the status updates? For example, how many calls does it take to field an answer with that, simple question, where's my stuff? Next, I would ask, in terms of sort of the next level of maturity, do you have the KPIs needed to do a true assessment of how well you're providing customer service and meeting expectations overall? And very importantly, what that level of service is actually costing you. As well, do you have the KPIs to leverage that data in an assessment of optimizing your processes and systems? Answer those questions, and if the answer is a yes, you're a leader. If you can't, then come talk to us.
Yeah, those are good questions because I think they suggest two different things. One is, it's very simple. It's to say, hey, what is what's the current effort that it takes to answer that question? And I think for a lot of companies, there's a lot of manual processing that takes place, right? A lot of phone calls, a lot of searching through spreadsheets, or having to go into 3 or 4 different systems and then, take information from this system, for information from that system, information from that system, and try to cobble it together to be able to answer the question. And I think if you actually kind of see how it's done today, you can see a lot of waste and inefficiency. And I think that's where there's a big value there just from that standpoint to, justify, investment in moving up the maturity curve in this area. And the second point you raise is, having metrics in place, right? So it's kind of gives you some direction in terms of, okay, these are the key things that we want to improve upon over the next year, over the next 3 years, over the next 5 years. And you have to have those metrics in place and be able to measure, your performance and how you're achieving them, in order to, be able to track that value. Because if you don't have that structure, it's like the classic saying, if you don't know where you're heading, you may never get there. Right. So, but again, Karen, great insights, great advice. Like I always say at the end of all our episodes, we always just manage to scratch the surface on these topics. And I'm sure we could probably talk for another hour or more on this, but I think we hit some highlights today and some good food for thought for folks. So again, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you, Adrian. Talk to you again soon.
Great. I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the MercuryGate website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Karen, you can post it there, and I'm sure she'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.